questions for you about Hot Flashes. And my first question is, you directed the film, so what was it about the movie and the script overall that convinced you to take on this movie?
Well, the first thing was that I love movies about female characters, and I've been directing movies and TV for the last 30 years, and primarily making, films that deal with being female at various stages of life. And so when I got the script and realized it was about five middle-aged women who want to prove they can still strut their stuff in some way and are doing it for a good cause. At this stage in my life, it was certainly something that I could relate to. And the other thing was that I really believe, and I hope I'm right, that there is this underserved audience out there of women over, I was going to say over 40, but I think even over 30, who are looking for characters that they can relate to in movies. And, to me, that was really important to show all different kinds of women on film. And certainly now that I am middle-aged, it was a theme I could definitely relate to personally.
And speaking about featuring women in movies overall, over the age of 30, like you mentioned, were there any particular stereotypes about women in general that you really wanted to maybe diminish or look at with this film overall?
Well, I think that basically, to me, one of the things that happens often in, with studio movies is that women get to play the leading ladies, and then they start to hit their late 30s, early 40s, and they become invisible on screen. There are a few exceptions. Certainly, Meryl Streep is an exception. but you'll notice that when you track different movie stars' careers, actresses' careers, that they're there, they're present, and then suddenly there's this dip, and they go invisible for a while. I mean, even the last couple of years, Julia Roberts, or a few years ago, Michelle Pfeiffer, and to me, it's a shame that there's all this talent out there, and that I also believe that there's an audience out there of women of a certain age who still want to see characters that they can relate to. So the opportunity to make a movie that had these characters and that could enable me to work with these great actresses that deserve to be leading ladies still, to me made the film unique and special. And I think also I like comedy, but I like comedy that has a message underneath it. And to me, if you can, this is it's a feel-good movie, but I think it's also about something important. Well, actually, two things important. One is, the early breast cancer detection message, which is the whole reason this basketball team comes back together to save the local mammogram mobile, but also that these women get an opportunity to prove that they still have self-worth, that they can do something that's important, that makes them feel good about themselves and makes them feel good in their community. To me, that's a real empowering and positive message, as long as it's not too heavy-handed and it still, works as entertainment, which was the goal, to be entertaining, but also, have this underlying theme or themes.
And speaking of that issue of breast awareness, breast cancer awareness, as well as the stereotypes of maybe the middle-aged women in the film, why was it important for you, particularly as a female filmmaker yourself, to really focus on these issues in the film?
Well, part of me feels like there aren't that many female women who are directing movies, and that's not to say women have to only direct movies about women's issues or starring women, but I happen to like female characters. So for me, it's important as one of the few working female directors to deal with those kinds of themes that I think are really important, and that that might not get out there if I'm not helping to put them out there.
Mm-hmm. And speaking of the older actresses working today, like you mentioned earlier, the movie overall features a diverse cast of the middle-aged actresses such as Brooke Shields and Wanda Sykes. So, what was the casting process like for that main cast overall?
Well, the film has, five different, it's about five different kinds of women that come together to form this team. So it was sort of fun because part of the challenge is to try to create each character in an authentic way, but also, try to select actresses that have something unique or special about them that we can bring out in the film. Whether it's, Brooke Shields, who has a kind of nice persona, or Wanda Sykes, who can be funny and sassy, or Camryn, who can be sort of tough on the outside but softer on the inside. So each actress brings their own flavor to the role. But again, and in terms of the casting process, because there are so few roles out there for middle-aged women, there are a lot of great actresses to choose from. So the challenge was to try to get the actresses that we wanted, that had the diversity we wanted, on a schedule. At the same time we could pull the financing together. That's always a bit of a juggling act. You can get actresses on board, and then you don't have the money together on time, and trying to combine the two things is always challenging for independent films. But for me, the other thing that was really important was that the friendship between the women, even though they're all different types, felt authentic. Often you make a movie and the actresses don't even meet each other until the first day on set, and they're supposed to be best friends. And to me, because this is a character comedy, it was important that the friendships felt authentic and got a chance to develop and change and grow. And because we had this, the other challenge was that the actresses had to learn how to play basketball. And none of them had been, our basketball players or had played basketball in many, many years. But we had this basketball training camp 3 weeks before we started filming. For 1 week, they all came down to New Orleans and learned how to play the game, learned how to play as a team. And the byproduct of that was so great was that they actually bonded and became friends, which I think rubbed off on the movie itself.
And speaking about the fact that they were all supposed to be friends in the film, what was your working relationship with the actresses and maybe their relationships together while you were filming the movie overall?
Well, I think that their relationships with each other was amazing because they were starting off the movie already knowing each other and being friends. We were filming in New Orleans, which is a fun city to film in, so they were friends on camera and off camera. They would go out to bars and clubs, and I think they went to a couple basketball games together. So it wasn't that they just worked together on film, went home, and that was it. They really are friends, and I think will remain friends. I'm not saying for their entire lives, but beyond the life of the movie. For me, I worked with them in a each one in a different sort of way. Probably the one I worked with the most was Brooke Shields, because she is sort of the core of the movie, and she's in every single scene. She didn't have a day off. She's sort of the thread that holds the whole thing together. So, to me it was really important that her character worked and was authentic and and was, just felt real.
And speaking of the film's finances, like you mentioned earlier, the movie was an independent film. So, were there any maybe challenges overall while you were shooting, since this was an independent film? And do you generally enjoy making independent films overall?
I love making independent films because I love that they allow you to make the kind of movie you want to make. Putting together the financing of the movie is harder and more time consuming than making the movie. That's the downside of independent filmmaking, is just the amount of time. I mean, in this case, it was a couple of years to get the project together to a point where it could get its financing and working working out all the paperwork and piecing together the money. And, again, a lot of that was left up to my producer partners, Brad Hennig and Nina Henderson Moore, who dealt more with the business side of things. But I know that that was a full-time job. And ultimately, the money, interestingly enough, the money came from an investor group of women. Women, again, of a certain age, middle-aged women who believed that the breast cancer theme was really important. Also were interested in, happened to like basketball, and thought that, there wasn't this kind of movie out there, and they wanted to be involved in helping to get it made.
Karen, we have time for one more question.
And speaking of the producing aspect, you also served as a producer on the film as well as directing it. So, what was that experience like for you overall, being a producer as well as a director?
Well, I think that there's three producers, and we each have a different skill set. My job as a producer was to bring in the elements that could help the other producers raise the money. So my job as a producer was like to bring on the cast, and some other elements like we had the president of the WNBA, Donna Orender, involved in the project from an earlier stage to help us with sort of the basketball aspect of it. Brad is really good at marketing. And that's sort of what his other profession is besides screenwriting. So everything having to do with marketing was sort of, his specialty, as well as finding the investors and bringing them on board. And Nina's background comes from marketing, but also business. So she understood things about contracts and how you just sort of shuffle the money around to make it stretch out to cover the production. So we all brought a very different perspective to our roles as producers.
Okay, thank you very much for your time. I appreciate it.
Thank you.
Thanks, Karen.
Thank you. Have a great
Take care.
day. Bye.